let me show you what it is. I've gone back to the simple scene. Here is our project for today. It's a little different color palette, but it is fall. And I love this palette. And I kind of have been stuck in this, you know, orange and olive green and, you know, the traditional fall color palette. And so I just thought it would be really fun to brighten it up with some bright green and some blues and some yellows. So that's what we're gonna do today. And if you would like to have this project, say so in the comments and we'll go through there. And like I said, Leah will pick a winner. Okay, you guys, so I will try to, I'll try to watch my comments. I say that every time. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to show you guys today is the bats, because if you were watching last week, I said I was going to show you how to freehand a bat, and I absolutely spaced it. I had a senior moment and absolutely spaced it. So I am going to show you how to hand draw a bat. Very first thing that we're going to do today. It has nothing to do with our fall project, but I have to show you guys how to do that. It's so easy, and I said I would do it, and then I completely forgot. So, okay, let me switch this around, and I'll go back to this graphic again towards the end so that you can see it, but it really what you need to know is celebrate 34. That's the code, and you will get that 34% discount. Okay, I'm gonna switch this around now and get my station set up here. Okay, here we go. Make sure that I'm in the center. I just sometimes, you know, it's really easy to just go off the screen, so I don't want to do that for sure. Okay, so here is our project, and if you can pick it out, I started with a simple scene, a really easy one. Well, let's go through and I'll explain to you what I'm using here in this project. So here is the basic scene. This is the one that I'm using. If you don't have any of these, this is a good one to start with. It's very simple, and it works with a lot of different, there are a lot of different options with this one. It's the simplest one of all, and I use it all the time. So this would be a really good one to start with, you know, if you don't have any of these basic scenes. So I'm using this one, and then the vintage car set, I'm using the little fence, this one here. Actually, this one right here. I love this, you know, and I'm doing more of this where I'm doing the mirror image because it's really nice to have that option to do it coming from the other direction. And I've really kind of found that to be true, you know, in the last year or so. So I'm doing more of that. I picked one of these little mini cottages. Now, any little structure is going to work. You could put a barn back there. That would be really harvesty. You could put any little cottage or, you know, little church or anything back in the background like that. And any little structure is going to work. I picked this one. I just picked that one. So in the barn set, I love this set. You know what? My favorite thing about this set is the fences. So we are going to use this little fence here. And then in foliage set 4, a couple of things, my little accent grasses, which I just love and use all the time. And this little leafy branch. And then in the branches set, my other favorite, this little guy, we're gonna use this one. And in the mini foliage set and the large tree set, we're not using anything other than the leaves. So these two, and I love these because they're very versatile. I'm going to show you a different way to use them today, and I love that you can use them different ways. This also, if you don't have this set, you know, with this sale, I would really consider the set. I use this all the time. I love this set so much. It really creates these beautiful backgrounds, you know, these little trees, and I think that it's kind of one of those must-haves. I really think that. Okay, so this one here, and then in the foliage set, the little tiny grass. So this would be a starter one that you would want to start with, a basic foliage set and then a basic flower set. So 1 and 2. Okay, so here is the project. Now, the first thing that I did was stamp the simple scene, and you can see that I have a border here. So I went, just for time's sake, I went ahead and did that already. And this opening, I believe it's is it a 3x3? It's a 3x3, so a square. And here's what I do. I just pick something and trace around it. So, okay, this looks like a good size. So I just trace around this with a pencil, and then I cover that area with the Post-it tape. So now I have this all blocked up except for the center. And you can see how light this is in the center. With this project, I'm really covering a lot of areas. And the point of the simple scenes is just to give you a base. Where's everything going? Where are the hills? Where's the path coming? So that you get a perspective and you can see how everything comes together. It's really, most of the time, you're going to stamp things behind or in front of these lines. And that's why it's really important to stamp this light, really, really light. So in this case, I'm stamping a lot of stuff all over this. So I just stamped the whole thing really, really light. And I want to show you, actually I want to show you something really quickly with this. When you go to ink these, and especially if you're using the clear, here's what I use. This is the N89. It's a very, very light gray is actually what it is. And you want to just take the side of your marker and really go over it one time. Just one time, that's all it takes. And the thing is it looks like you haven't got any ink on here. It really does. It looks like there's nothing showing, but this is what you want. Do you see how light that is? This is what you want. If you go through here, let's turn this over. And because you think, oh, there's no ink on here. And so I'm just, wow, I don't see any ink. And so I'm just gonna go over this again and make sure that I've got ink on here. Here's what happens. It gets too dark and it gets too blotchy. And then you can't stamp over that. So even though it looks, and before you do it, just clean it really good, dry it off, and make sure there's no ink on there. And then just one time over, with your marker, just one time over, and make sure that you get that, that you don't get too much ink on there. Let me show you just one more time because it's really important. And this works with all of them, all of the simple scenes. So there are some times when, we're using these that maybe we'll use another color. So if we're going to not put anything in the foreground, maybe we'll color these lines with a green. Some of the tutorials do that. But when you're using the light color, this light color, you want to just go over it with the side of your marker one time. And then stamp that on here. And that's exactly what we want. See how light that is? And pretty uniform too. So just a little tip that you might want to consider because it really is important that those things are light. So that's what I did. I stamped this on here kind of in the middle, a little bit towards the top. It really doesn't, it really doesn't matter. We've got boundaries here. And when you're just starting out, it's kind of nice to do these little projects with a boundary because you don't have to worry about where everything's going and if your picture is balanced and, where do the trees end and where does the path end? This way it's all sort of contained and you have boundaries in here. So, that's a good way to start. Okay, so let's get our basic images in here. That's always the next thing to do. And I'm going to kind of tuck this little house. And if you look on the original, it adds a little more interest when you have a little hill like this, and you can tuck that little structure down behind it. Now you could obviously set it up on top, but it sort of brings this little curve around and makes it look like this is a little pathway coming from the door. And I've just tucked that down in there. And all I did was I just took a piece of Post-it tape and I just, kind of made a little curve in it. So just with my, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I just cut a little curve in it like this and then just covered that little hill. And now I'm going to take my, positioner, see if I can find a clean little plate here. Sometimes I leave these, images on here. I have so many of these little acrylic plates, and I leave the image on here because I know I'm going to use it again, and then I never clean it off. So, okay, so I've got a clean one here, and I'm going to use my positioner, and I'm going to ink this with two colors, and then I'm going to stamp it off. So let me get my scratch paper here that I had. And I'm going to ink this in two colors. I'm going to start with the dark blue. So that is the 565. We're going to ink this first with the dark blue. And then right over the top, we're going to ink it with the dark brown. And then I'm going to just stamp it into the corner so that I can see it. And then just tap it off a little bit on my scratch paper. Now I'm going to push it off the edge a little bit, so that also adds a little interest. And I think I want to put it right about there. So you can see it's kind of tucked behind that hill, just a little bit. And now I can place this back in the corner. And there we go. So we've got our little structure, kind of tucked behind the hill and kind of hidden back in here. Okay, and you can see that the simple scene line is coming through here, but that's okay. We're going to add some color to it, and that's going to disappear. So we're not going to worry about that. So let's go ahead and get the fence in. And we're going to do this too with the two different colors. So we're going to do the dark blue first. You know, in the beginning, I used to be a lot more picky about which color went first. And, you know, just for the sake of saving my blue pen, I do the blue first now, most of the time. Sometimes I'll do the reverse, but when you do the brown first and then the blue, you really muddy your blue pen. So, you know, in most cases, it really doesn't make that much difference. And then the dark brown over the top. And then I'm going to use my positioner. And I think I'll go this direction. And I want this really light. So I'm gonna stamp this off again, just to make sure that fence is super light. And I'm going to start over here and just kind of bring it across the front. I could go just a little bit higher too, actually, maybe just right here. This is good. This is the nice thing about these little acrylic plates, is because you can kind of position and kind of look around and decide exactly where you want all of this to go. So I'm going to just move it up just a little bit, and I think right there will be good. Okay, that is perfect. Now we've got our fence, and it's kind of out in space here. So I'm going to extend that with another post. And I think right about here, that's going to be really good. So I'm going to just place my positioner right here. And then I'm just going to take a little piece of Post-it tape. Don't let that move. And cover this little area here, so that I don't stamp over the top of my post. And I think if I huff on that, I can get one more impression. Okay, so now we've got our stamp kind of, or a little fence elongated, and it doesn't line up perfectly, but that does not matter at all. Take your handy little pencil, just like this, and just bring those lines across. You want to do this with a pencil as opposed to a marker. You know, the markers they're just too much ink. And, you know, you just want to be able to see this with your eye where that fence is going. But you can see that you can extend this fence, and it looks really good, doesn't it? I mean, it works great. So you're not locked in to this specific image. There's so many more things that you can do. Okay, so we've got that in here, and I think there's only just the 3 basic images. So let's get going with the rest of our project. Let me move these things out of the way so I have a little more space. And I'll get my palette and my brush. So I'm going to dip my brush, pinch it off, and let's start out with this little house. So I'm going to just pull the color out of the lines, you know, underneath, you know, the eaves. That's where it's going to be the darkest. And this side here, this is in the shade. So this is going to be darker, and we're just kind of in the beginning stages. So We're just kind of doing the very first steps. Pull some of this color out of this little door and the little chimney up here. And just kind of muddy this up a little bit. And you'll start seeing, you know, that it's starting to look more three-dimensional. I'm going to put some color on my palette now. I've got 3 different greens I'm using here. So here's the warm green. This is a 177. This is 173. I love this bright green. And then the 249, which is a cool green. So I'm going to put some of this cool green onto my palette. And the blue, the 526, this is a warm blue. And I'm just going to kind of mix these together a little bit, and very, very light. Very light. And start out with this color on the side. I started with this color palette because of the blue pumpkins. I just love blue pumpkins. And now it's really hard for me to do a whole row of orange pumpkins. I've got to get a blue one in there and a white one somewhere. So I just really love this, this really warm blue for these fall projects. I just think it just kind of changes it up a little bit. It's so fun. And I'm making this very light here. This is super light. And I'm just adding some green in here. You know, when you can mix colors, you're going to have something that looks a lot more natural. And just bring it down. You can see those lines, you know, here where the simple scene was. You can see those are kind of disappearing now. And we can go back in and add some more color in here too. But this side, this area here, this needs to be way darker. And that's what brings this out and makes this look three-dimensional. This here, this overhang also. And under here. So you can see that really changes. Now, well, let's get the windows in, because this also changes everything. And I'm going to use my twin tone. I'm going to use my brown, my dark brown, my fine tip. And I'm just going to put some little details into the windows. They don't have to be perfect, but they really add a lot. See how that pops that out? It really, really makes a difference. This is the fun part to me. I just love doing all these little details. And then when you really see your work changing, I think that also just makes it so fun. Now these on the side are going to be really, really narrow. So you don't want to make these the same size as these. You know, and you can add a little more color, you know, back in here. Now this side of the chimney, you know, this is also going to be dark here, just like this side of the house. And let's do a bright green door. Take some of this. And just color that in. Nothing to it, you guys. And I'm just going to take my fine tip now and kind of darken this area in here. So that kind of sets the door back a little bit. And then we may come back and do a little bit more in here too. So I'm going to add some dark brown now. So this is the dark brown, the 969. And I'm going to put just a little bit of color on the roof, just a little bit. Leave that highlight at the top so that you're not coloring everything in solid. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. And like I said, we can come back and address this again. You know, before I finish and sign, I always look over it and see if there's something else that I can add to it or change up a little bit. But I just love these little structures. They're just so fun to do. And they're all kind of the same. You kind of do them all the same way. Okay, so now let's do something here in the background. So I'm going to put some little trees back in here, and I'm going to do that with my orange. So I'm going to start out with the orange and the little foliage. So this is the small one that's in that little mini set. And I'm just going to just bring it over and across the back here. I'll just show you. Okay, so I'm just going to take my, my orange, and this orange is number 933. And I'm just going to kind of go across here. You can turn this and change the shape a little bit. You know, just like this. And it looks like they're just kind of out in the middle of nowhere, doesn't it? It's just, you know, never give up at this stage. And you guys, I have not forgot about the bats. I have not. I have like 3 notes here to remind me to do the bats. So don't let me hang up without showing you guys the bats today. I have got to do that. Okay, so now that we've got this orange in here, I'm going to add a tiny little bit of red, just a little bit. Red is very concentrated, and it will, wow, take over. So just a little bit of red kind of goes a long ways. And I've just added a little bit onto here, just to kind of brighten it up a little bit. So cute. I just love these bright colors. Love it. So now I'm going to take some of my bright green. This is that bright green. This is number 173, that really bright green. And I'm going to mix a little bit with this warm green. And that was the 177. So the 177 and the bright green. And I'm going to just kind of mix these up and just brush in a little bit of color back in here. And then we could just put in a little color back in here too. And just kind of follow those lines, you know, where those hills are, just kind of follow those lines. That will really help you with your perspective. It really, really will. Okay, so now I've got this little hill in. And this bright green. And now we're going to take our fine tip. Now, you know, there's little tiny trees, you know, especially on that one little set, you know, on here. Let me just show you. Now, you could use these. You could use these tiny little trees for in the background, but they're a little big, even for these. So, and this is a tiny little mini set. So I'm going to show you that you can hand draw these in. So when you're doing something really tiny back here in the background, just a few little lines. Start out with a straight line, just like that, and then a few little lines up in here. Don't be afraid to do this, you guys, because sometimes you just need a tiny little tree in the background, just like this, just a tiny little one. And, you know, a stamp can just be too big sometimes. So don't be afraid to do some of these things, you know, just with your fine tip. See how cute that is? So easy, just nothing to it. And let's put the little fence in right in the front. So I'm just going to start here, and I'm just going to, you know, and if the fence doesn't exactly line up, that's okay too. It's totally fine. I'm just going to clean this off now because I have this little space left. And actually, I might just put a little Post-it tape here and then take the end and just finish it off. It just looks like the fence is kind of wonky and just kind of winding all over the place, and you know, it just makes it a lot more natural looking. And you can always add another post, you know, with your fine tip. just add another post in here. So for example, if you think that there should be a post here, just put one in. I love how they kind of, it kind of bends and winds and doesn't, it doesn't look all perfect. I think that adds a lot to it. So cute. And then I'm going to take my, my dark green here, and I'm just going to make a line kind of under it. And then maybe another line here. And a few little slats like that. Don't overdo it. It's just the idea of it. So it's just, basically, it just looks like it's a little shadow from here. And I'm just going to kind of blend these together. I just love this blended look. And you can add way more trees in here if you want to. That is totally up to you. Okay, so let's keep going. I'm going to add some really bright blue sky in the background. I think about those fall days, crisp fall days with like just a bright blue sky. I just love that. And you can see I'm getting this blue, I'm getting color to all of the areas, of the image. So wherever the boundary is, because when we pull the tape off, we have to see where the boundary is. So we have to get the color clear up to the edge. And I'm just going to extend this back here a little bit. This a little darker. Like so. Okay, and I think maybe just a little darker blue up in here. And I left some white spaces so we could, they look like little, fluffy clouds. When you're doing the sky, I think I say this every time, you're pushing that color. So you're not stroking. Don't do any brush strokes. You're just kind of pushing that color around. It's going to look way more natural to do it that way. Kind of washing out that brown underneath there. Okay, so let's keep going. And let's get some of this bright green in here because I just love this color. And let's put some of this in the foreground. And we can add a little green of the other green to it too. You're using watercolor paper, so it can really hold the water. It can hold the water and the color. Okay, so let's just come down around here, add a little bit more green in here. We're going to put some flowers in here. Starting to shape up. So I'm going to take some of this darker green. Now this, if you add a little stroke of green, you're going to create a little bank. And the same, around this way. Now there wouldn't be one here, right? Because this is the top of the hill. This is the top of the hill. So there's no line here, but there would be here. So this won't have a bank here, but this one will as you come around. See how that just creates this three-dimensional image. I'm just going to make this a little darker back here where the little house is. Kind of like a little shadow back here. Okay, and I may go in and just put when this is dry, just put in a darker line here, sort of to define that hill again. But we can do that at the end. Okay, let's go on to the fence. And I want this to be pretty light because I have a lot of color going on here, and I want to stamp some things over the top. So I'm just going to really lightly pull the color out. kind of as we go. You know, the color is always going to be darker on the bottom. So if you just, you know, kind of keep that in mind when you're doing these things, when you're pulling the color out, you know, of the lines, underneath is where it's going to be the darkest. Okay, so now let's put in our florals in the background, and I'm going to use a bright yellow 993, and I'm going to use this larger leaf. So this is from that tree set, and this works great as a floral. Just works great. And I'm just going to kind of stamp this in here, tap it in here just like that, and then kind of behind the fence. And maybe get a couple up here. Maybe it's kind of extending up there. And all these little yellow blooms in the background. You know, and you can see it doesn't, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. It really doesn't. I mean, basically we're just stamping in some texture here, and then we're going to add water to it. And you're still going to see those, you know, definite, definitely you're going to see the lines, you know, the image. Does anybody else have problems with word recall? I tell ya, I cannot think of words anymore. It's so bad, you guys. So bad. Okay, 993. This is the orange. I'm going to put a little bit of this in here. I mean, I just call it senioritis. I mean, what else are we going to do? But things that I should know, I just like, my recall is so bad. Okay, and I just tapped in a little bit of that orange, kind of like the red. You know, always remember that you don't have to ink the whole thing. You can ink little bits and pieces of these stamps. That is the great thing about markers. That's why we use markers, is because we're using bits and pieces most of the time. We're not using the whole stamp most of the time. And so we got some contrast in here. And then underneath this fence, I'm going to put some grasses in just to kind of cement this down to the ground. And I'm going to use the cool green. So this is the 249. Let me see. Make sure I can see my comments here, you guys. I should be looking over here more often. Okay. So I'm using this little grass and kind of walking it. And walking it under here as well. So you're kind of just bringing in a, you know, the ground, because everything kind of looks like it's kind of floating in the air, and we're sort of grounding everything now. And just pull this, you know, pull this color up. This is the only time you really have permission to do brush strokes. So you're kind of just dragging this color up. And then I'm just gonna pull a little bit of this color, maybe take some of this bright green and kind of mix it in here. And again, see, I'm coming down here where the boundary is to make sure I get this color in here. Okay, so let's go on, and we're going to put some color in here now, something bright. And this is part of the reason why I left that fence really light, is so that I could stamp over it with this little branch. And I'm going to use that dark brown. And I'm just going to ink this and maybe bring it in from over here to start. And then maybe grow another one up here. And maybe bring another one in this way. And then let's put in some bright red. This is the 885. And here's the leaf I'm going to use. I'm just going to use part of it. So here we go again with the markers. I'm just going to use this section of this little branch. And just put in a little bit of this red. Just here and there. kind of just jazzes it up a little bit, doesn't it? Just adding something bright in here. And I've kept these, you know, these little flowers and everything in the fence light so that this color would really, really pop. Let's see, do we need a little bit more there? And I kind of like the defined shape of the leaf. So I'm not going to add too much water to it. I'm just going to kind of soften this. And so that you can kind of see that these are little sparse leaves on here. So cute. Okay, so let's get some color now here into the background. And I'm going to use that same leaf. So this one, the one that I used for the background trees. And I'm going to just use some blue and not ink the bottom. So I'm just inking kind of the top part of it and just kind of stamping this in here like this. So it just kind of looks like there's just a, you know, some wildflowers kind of growing into the grass. A little bit of blue. And then just kind of dab it, just dab it. It blends, you know, the blue blends really, really well with the green. So you can just kind of mix that all in together. Let's see where the, okay, here we go. So I'm just, you know, I'm just kind of blending this out. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of grass in here again. And I'm using the tiny, tiny grass from this set. So this little one right here, because it's way farther into the background. And I just want to make sure that I get this really tiny. So I'm going to use that cool green. It really doesn't matter what green you use. And kind of cement this down too. Just back in here. And adding that grass just kind of, you know, creates a boundary. And just makes it look like that is growing, you know, into the grass. And I'm just going to add a little more green in here now that I've got some space. And I've left the little path white. You could add some color to it if you want to, but I kind of like that it kind of stands out a little bit. The white kind of makes it stand out. And I just instead would create this bank and make the bank a little darker, you know, as it comes around here. And kind of highlight the path that way. And I'm going to just put a little line here so we have a little more of a boundary here with this hill. And tuck that down underneath. And let's put in some little decorative grasses here. And I think I'll go with the brown. This is a warm brown in 947. So let's just put in some of this kind of dried grass here. Make it look like it's just a little overgrown. And really, you don't have to add much, you know, water to this, certainly not to the tops. If you're going to add any, you're going to do it to the bottom of these little grassy stalks. So not to the top. And then if you want to add any kind of a shadow, you're going to do it later, once you've got everything in here. And this is just the dark blue. And I think I'll just come in here with my fine tip and, you know, make some of these little details, you know, where these posts kind of fit in. You know, there would be kind of a you know, hole here where these little posts fit in. So we could kind of create that and get those dark areas in. That always creates more dimension. See how that just kind of popped it out? It's like the windows. You know, when you put the windows in, you know, those little window panes, how it just pops your windows out. It's the same with things like this. If you can find those areas that you can really darken, it's going to really make a difference. Just going to come under here and make sure that I've got all this. How about a little door? Let's put a little doorknob on here. Great. And I think we've got everything here. Let's just add just a few more details. A few more areas in this grassy area here. You know, the more you blend it out, the softer it gets. You know, and if you like that look, I do. I just love how everything just blends out. It almost looks so whimsical. And it just, you know, it's kind of a peaceful look. You know, don't be afraid to put more colors on things. You know, I mean, my brush was in different colors and I'm just putting it on here because there's lots of shadows and colors, you know, reflections. And when you do that, I think it adds more to your composition. I'm going to make this just a little darker back here. Okay, that looks pretty good. I think that looks good, pretty good. So let's do the reveal. Let's take this tape off. And see what we've got. Our little painting is done. So we just need to erase those lines. Make sure it's dry. You know, of course, make sure it's totally dry. But now you can erase these lines. It's just so cute. You can see why it's important to get that color to the lines. I mean, to the tape, post-it tape. Okay, that looks pretty good. And I would probably sign it right down here. So be sure you sign your work. You know, that's so important that you do that. You know, every time you do this, they're going to be different. And, you know, to get an original work of art is just, it's so cool. And date it because it's really fun to see where you come. You know, you're going to improve, especially when you do these projects and you do them often. You're going to improve and you're going to be able to see that. You know, when you look back on some of the projects that you've done, you'll be able to see that you've really come a long ways. Okay, the bats. I got to show you guys how to do the bats. So let me get a little piece of paper here. This is so easy and you can do this. So if you don't have a stamp of bats and you don't have a stamp of flying birds, you can make this. Now use a micron, that's what I use, you know, because it's a really fine tip. This is an 01. And you know how you kind of make these birds in the background and they kind of look like this. I'm going to just zoom in because it's so tiny. So you just make a little bird like that. Well, a bat is more of a triangle. So the wings are a little bit longer And you just want to make a little dent. So 1, 2, 1, 2, and they kind of come down to a point down at the bottom. And then you just make a little dome and some little ears. And that's it. And then just color it in. So you can use your brush. You can use your brush and a marker. So here's just a black and a little tiny #1 brush. And the micron won't blend. It's not water soluble. So they just kind of come down more to a point. They're more of a triangle. And then they got their little ears on top. And that's it. Let me hold this up so you can see it. Super easy. Let me show you one more time. So you're going to start out with a flying bird. Just like that. And then just, make your little, and then a little dome on top, and then little ears. That's it. And then fill it in. You guys can do that. Nothing to it. Okay, so let me switch my camera around and I will say my goodbyes to you. If you have any questions, Leah is in the house. She is on the phone and she will answer any questions that you have. Thank you guys all for being here. This video will of course be on Facebook, so you'll be able to come back and watch it later. Check out Instagram and all of that. If you have not joined the Art Impressions groups on Facebook, please do that. There are 2 now. The first one, Carla's group, has been around. I believe it's almost 5 years. Carla is, if you're on, I think it's been 5 years, and she has an amazing group. They are close to 3,000 now, and a lot of watercolor. So if you guys need inspiration, check those groups out. I mean, these are not our personal groups. These are private groups, so you don't have to ask to join, but they are amazing. And a new one now, the new one called the Art Impressions Way, and it is also full of inspiration. So if you guys have not checked out these groups, you need to do that. They are so fun. And sometimes you just need an idea. And these girls post all the time. They're really encouraging and they're just so fun. So if either of you from the Art Impressions stamp group or the Art Impressions Way, post a link on here so people can see where to go. But check those 2 out. They are absolutely amazing. I love to get on there and just see what they're doing. I'm inspired by them, the amazing artists that are on there. They're so great, and it's really fun to go on there and check them out. So check out Pinterest, Facebook, Instagram for more inspiration. These videos will also be on YouTube, so you can watch them there. And then, of course, Kendra is on Tuesdays. She is on Back to Basics, and those of you who have been following her, she's been doing some amazing wreaths. Really, really pretty wreaths for holidays. So, you guys, thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions? Let me just scroll through here and just see if there are any questions. Okay, Diane Mason, the Art Impressions Way. Great. Thank you for posting that. Anybody on the Art Impressions stamp group? Post that one too. I mean, these girls, they're so good that I feel like I've got to just be on my toes to keep up with them. They're so good. And it's really fun to see the ideas they come up with. Love it. Okay, Velda, thank you. Love to the Krebs family on our anniversary. I know we are so thankful to still be here and being with all of you great people. Okay. Any news on the 2021 exclusive set? It is coming, you guys. If you have not subscribed to our newsletter, be sure to do that because the exclusive set is coming. I have done one and I love it, and I also will do a tutorial on it. So keep your eyes on your mailbox and check that out because it is on the way. All right, everyone. Thank you for all the happy 34th year comments. Thank you for all the happy anniversary comments. What pen were you accenting with? Okay, so let me just answer that really quickly. The twin tones. So these two, these are called twin tones, and they're on our website. So on sale, you can get the blue, the green, and there's a green also. So the brown one is the one that I've been using, and we just have the 3 colors in the twin tones. Okay, will you be doing an online warehouse sale this year? To be determined. We have not decided that yet, but you guys, you know, on Facebook, you hear it first here. So we will for sure keep you updated on that. And then, you know, like I said, if you haven't subscribed to our email or our newsletter, be sure to do that. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter, because that's where we give you all the information. Okay, well, I think that is it. Remember, celebrate 34. And I will see you guys all back again next week with another project next Wednesday for Watercolor Wednesday. Thank you so much for being with me. And I will see you all next week.